This morning I want to share on what I title Godly Living in a Wrong World. How can I live normal life in a world that is gone bonkers, balmy, anything you want to use, that is upside down? How can I stay upside right? How can I keep my mind focused on the things of God when I'm surrounded by such a world that is around me? Let's look at 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 and to verse 4. Apostle Paul, writing to his son in the ministry, Timothy, just shortly before his death, he penned down this letter to Timothy. And I believe it's one of the, if you want to know what's very, very important in the New Testament, look at the last few letters that Paul wrote. Some very salient things he mentioned. And I think it's relevant for us today as well. Remember this. There are some terrible times coming in the last days. And I always say, if 2,000 years ago was the last days, then where are we now in terms of chronology and time? We must be in the back end of the last days. And they said people will love only themselves and money. Is that a surprise? People will love only themselves and money. You only need to look around you and see where people's affection is. It's not for others, it's for themselves. It's about I, me, and myself. He said they will be proud and boast about themselves. For those of you who use Facebook intensely, you are aware of this. You know how people do boast about themselves and they are proud. It's about me. It's about my achievements. It's about what I've done. Look at me. See what I'm doing. See what I'm about to do. And some of it is absolutely false because it's not real. People put images on, they put an identity on social media that is not a true reflection of who they are. Share with us your pain. Share with us your challenges. Don't just share the good things alone. Share everything about yourself. That's the way to be real. That's the way to be real. It says they will abuse others with insults. You know about that, don't you? People don't care how you feel, the way they treat you. They can treat you the way they want. You know, I've made, sometimes I'm driving, I make mistakes. While I'm driving, I won't go into details just in case there's any staff of the DVLA here. I still want to go back home after this service. And you see people give you the finger just because you made an error. They just tell you things. I've even had, because of the color of my skin, I've had people abuse me while I made a mistake. Maybe I cut a corner or I drove too fast, or instead of queuing, I went ahead of the queue, you know. I'm not the only one. Pastor Alex does that too as well. I have it on record. Sorry, Pastor. We'll resolve tomorrow in the office. They will not obey their parents. This is not just talking about recalcitrant kids or teenagers being who they are. It's talking about culture. It's talking about a custom here, where young people no longer have respect for either their parents. They don't have respect for teachers in the schools. I have people say to me, I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I said, why? I can't take it. They say, I can't take it. And for those of you who are still in that system, as teachers, as lecturers, what an amazing job you're doing. What an amazing job you're doing. Apostle Paul went further to say they will be ungrateful and against all that is pleasing to God. They will have no love for others and will refuse to forgive anyone. It's easier to forgive than not to forgive. And you know, I meet people who never let go. They never let go. They still remember things that have happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. They still hold it. And they say, I will never forgive. I will never forgive. And they live with that pain and they live with that hurt. And the person whom, you know, they're holding that is walking about free, but they are bound. They are in chains because they refuse to forgive. And they will talk about others to hurt them and will have no self-control. You know, people, especially again on social media, people don't, you know, they don't spare punches when they want to write things and say things. You share what God is doing in your life, or you share something amazing you're doing in the community, and some random people just decide to write things about you and hurt you with the intention of making you feel pain. And they use all kinds of things. They've never met you before. They don't know you from anywhere. But they just want to hurt you. It's like they have joy in seeing somebody else hurt and in pain. And that's the world that we live around us. It says people will turn against their friends. Tell me about that. Have you ever had people that you thought were your friends? And you were like, oh, I thought she was my friend. I thought he was my friend. Don't be surprised. Apostle Paul said, these things will happen. Listen, if you want to be nice, be nice. Don't be nice expecting that if I'm nice to him, he'll be nice back to me. No, just be nice. Just be nice. Because if you expect and people don't give you, that opens the door to disappointment. That opens the door for you to feel let down and heartbroken. You know, I've learned in my short life that I just be nice to people. I just do good to people. I have had people in my life who were going through challenges. A particular fella going through a difficult time, had no home, had nothing. I brought him into my house. You know, he wore my clothes, wore my suit, wore everything. Wore my shoes, except some other things, you know, but wore. And the way when things got okay for him, the way he turned around and stabbed me in the back, I was like, whoosh. But these things happen, so I've learned, I'm nice. I try to be nice, not expecting anything back in return. If you get something back in return, count it a bonus. And say, wow, that's good for a change. That way you guard your heart with all diligence. Out of it are the issues of life. He said they will be cruel and hate what is good. People will turn against their friends. They will do foolish things without thinking, will be so proud of themselves. Instead of loving God, they will love pleasure. You see, I took my time for us to look at the Bible, because there's something about looking at the content of the Bible. And you know that what's happening in our world today is in the Bible. The violence, the cruelty, the abuse, the parents even abusing their children, and children abusing their parents, and things that happen in life, in the world, the cruelty, the wickedness, and the perverseness has all been spoken of. And Jesus said, praying to the Father, he said, I'm not praying that you take them out of this world. No. Leave them in the world and let them make the difference to the world. God wants us to be the light in the darkness. And you see, the danger we have is that if we are not careful, we can begin to think, well, that's the norm. Well, that's cool. That's just right for us to do. No, you've got to stay upright in a down upside down world. You've got to keep your heart with all diligence. You've got to maintain your sanity. When everybody thinks wickedness is good, it's good to hurt someone, it's good to abuse someone, it's good to say things just to throw them off. You say, no, it's good to be nice, it's good to be kind, it's good to love, it's good to forgive, it's good to be a man and a woman of peace, it's good to bring people back together. I was reading during the week, and I shared it at the all night. I was reading, statistics says 100,000 couples every year in England and Wales go through divorce every year. 100,000. That's a staggering number. That's 100,000 people every year saying, I don't love you anymore. I don't care for you anymore. You know, good reasons. There might be good reasons. But what led to that? What started the process? I think that's where God says, no, we got to guard our heart. And I tell couples who are going through stuff, hey, don't just heap the blame on the other guy or on the other girl. You know, everybody's got to take responsibility. You know, if things go right, you both take the responsibility. If it goes wrong, both share the responsibility as well. Nobody is right. Nobody ever wins. When a divorce happens, nobody is the winner. The parents don't win. The children don't win. The society don't win. The community don't win. Because God says, I hate divorce. It's in the scriptures. So if it happens, if we can't stop it, there are things that happen beyond your power. Sometimes people divorce, you know, for safety reasons, if their life is in danger. It happens. That's great. But originally, that's not the will of the Father. But it's easy for us as Christians, even in a healthy marriage, to start thinking, could that be an option? When you can easily forgive and move on, you refuse, and it starts building up. A little hurt, become another one, become another one. And by the time you start placing all of these things, that person looks like a proper Satan. Yeah, I can tell you that. And you know, there's a way things magnify in our mind that someone you love and care for suddenly becomes the most hated thing in your life because you let that seed grow in your heart. I've got to keep my heart. A good friendship can suddenly become the worst of enemies. If we don't learn to forgive and let go and be nice and be kind, the Bible says, believe in the best of every one of us. The way, 3 things that I need to do if I'm not going to end up in an upside down world is, number 1, I've got to maintain my devotion to God. If I don't keep my devotion to God, listen, the enemy don't mind you having the best cars. It doesn't mind you having the best house. It doesn't mind you having everything, the glitz, the glamour, the glory that the world can give. He offered it to Jesus on a platter of gold. He said, I'll give you all of these things. Jesus said, no, I don't need all of these things. I just need my devotion to God. If I don't keep it, then the world will infiltrate my heart and infiltrate my mind. And I'll start thinking like all these things we read in 2 Timothy chapter 3. Then before you know it, a good Christian, you start keeping malice. A good Christian, you start hating, you start writing, you go online and people can't even read your social posts on social media. And people wonder, is this a Christian? I even have other Christians attacking themselves over an ideology. You believe in Trinity, I don't believe in Trinity. And they are raining abuse at each other. Christians, hang on a sec. Jesus doesn't care your theology. He cares your devotion to God. Pastor Paul says, we don't care what people think about our church. We care what the world out there thinks about our church. Because we are sent to the world. We are not light to light. We are light to darkness. Do you understand that? And Daniel, very quickly and briefly, Daniel was taken out of the land of promise in the Old Testament. And he went into slavery and he went into captivity. And in that process, they took away his land. They took away his all his affinity with the place where he grew up. They took away the promises of God that God's given them. Babylonian Empire took away all of these things. But one thing they couldn't take away from Daniel was his devotion to God in a strange land. You've read that psalm where he says, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and we cried our eyes out. And those who took us captive said, sing a song to us. And we replied and said, how can we sing a song in a strange land? Listen, the best place to sing a song is in a strange land. The best place to show that God is your God is when things are not convenient. When the people around you walk in hate, that's the time to walk in love. When the people around you don't forgive, that's the time to forgive. When the people around you are walking in darkness, that's the time to shine the light. Okay? How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? They asked. Daniel sang the Lord's song in captivity. And the enemies realized, oh, he's got favor. He's got favor with all these emperors. And I'll tell you, like I've said before, the emperors of Babylon were cruel, were wicked. But listen, Daniel found favor with each one of those emperors. You know, sometimes if you keep your devotion with God, your enemies can become your best friend. You never know what God can do. When a man's ways are pleasing unto the Lord, he makes even his enemies to keep peace with him, the book of Proverbs says. Don't worry too much about people's attitude towards you. Worry about your attitude towards God. And say, Lord, I'll keep my prayer. I'll keep my study. I'll keep coming to church. I'll keep serving the Lord. I'll keep doing what is right. I don't care what the social media say. I don't care what the newspapers say. I don't care what the community say. They might say Christianity is dated, but I know it's not dated. I know Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. I'll keep my devotion. I'll keep my devotion. And I found something very interesting in the story of Daniel, that the person who acknowledged Daniel's faith and devotion was Nebuchadnezzar, the king himself. He said, Daniel, wow, your God whom you serve, he will deliver you. He recognized that this Daniel was different. He was a slave, but a slave with a difference. He was brought in from captivity, but he was with a difference. Wherever you go, may people see you and say there's something different about you. There's something about the God that you serve. Whether it's in the bank, in the post office, in the shopping mall, as you interact with people, let them see the goodness and the kindness and the love of God. Sometimes God will prompt you, you're on the till. I remember one of our brothers in our church sharing with us, I was at the till, and this guy was busy looking. This woman, elderly woman, she was busy looking for her wallet. Possibly she misplaced it at home. He said, the Lord said to me, pay for that woman's shopping. And he just said, don't worry, I'll pay. And she looked at him, who are you? I'm a Christian. I'm a child of God. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. That's the way to show the love of God. Sometimes not Bible bashing people. Use kindness. Use your love. Some of you, people come and they say, I don't know, we've tried everything to make you angry. You're always nice. You're always kind. Don't stop being nice. Don't stop being kind. Keep on being nice. Keep on being good to people. Because that in itself is a great message to the community in which we find ourselves. Number 2, dedicated to the cause. Aaron, you're going to like this. 2 years ago, Pastor Paul said, we want to partner with Salford Reds Foundation and the Right to Rail project thing to support charities, local charities, because we're a church we're always involved in the community. We're always involved in shining the light outside the four walls of this church. And he said, I need 6 people who will cycle in a charity competition at the Trafford Center. And then you hop on this bike, and then there is a kind of a big screen, and then you can see how fast you're going, and you can see, how your team is doing. And then the team that comes up top will receive a trophy. You don't go away with it. You just take a picture with it and leave it behind. That's fine. If it's for charity, I can do that. And Pastor Paul said, I need 6 people. I'm looking for the 6th person who will do it. And without thinking, I said, I'll do it. I thought it was something like what I do in the gym, just at my pace, just roll the thing, at my pace. Then I got there and realized, they were furiously cycling away for 10 minutes, and then you come back for another 10 minutes, and then you come back for another 10 minutes, and they were going 80, 90, 100. And I was going 65, 55, 65, 45, 65, 45, 30. And something said, you've had enough. I said, no, I can't give up now. I promised Pastor Paul I've got to stick to it. I'm representing the church, I've got to stick to it. I'm part of a team. If I drop out, the team suffers. I've got to stick to it. I've got to be dedicated to the cause. And I just kept my mind. And then Bev came around, and then she took a picture of me. I didn't realize, but I was dying inside. And she took a picture of me. And she said, I took a picture of you. I said, only if you knew what was happening inside. Look, if I went there on my own, after 5 minutes, I would have said I've had enough and just go home. But because I knew this was not, it was beyond me. This is not about me. This was about a cause. This was about a people. This was about a community. This was about a project. Listen, you start living when you live for someone else, when you live for a cause, when you live for a purpose. It pushes you beyond what you can normally do. It pushes you out of your comfort zone. Some of us ask too many questions before you do something. If it's for the kingdom, if it's for good, if it is for a charitable purpose, don't even ask. Just step in. You'll be amazed the potential and the ability that God has put inside of you. Because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. And you know what? At the end of the day, the last picture there, you guess the team that won. The Lighthouse team won. Yeah. We won. And I say we won, even though I came last in my team, but we won. Come on. So I benefited from Aaron, Phil, Richard, everybody powering away furiously. I just benefited from that. Listen, the little that you do on the camera, the little you do on the technical desk, the little you do at the door, welcome team, the little you do in the kitchen, the little you do going into the toilet, cleaning up at the weekend, the little you do coming to set this place up, the little you do, some of you go to Narrowgate Shelter and you serve there, and the little you do once a week, twice a week, helping with the homeless shelter at the Narrowgate, the little that you do, some of you go to the prisons from here, you're stepping out of yourself, you're living for purpose, you're living for somebody else, someone else is benefiting from what you were doing. Listen, that's life. You start living when you live for somebody else. When you live for somebody else, you start living. Jesus Christ, I don't have time. Jesus Christ, when he was in Gethsemane, he got to that point. It was a breaking point. I didn't think, at no time did I think Jesus was changing his mind. But it was at that time, it was a crucible moment. It was a pivotal moment where it's either do or die. It's either you get on with this thing that will lead to the salvation of the world, or you back out. And he said, not my will, but yours be done. He said, the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. Jesus, as powerful as he is, came because of you, because of me. He left his home in glory. He He left his comfort in heaven and he came. What are you going to do in response to that? It's time to step out. Pastor Paul talked about, coming out of our bubble. It's time to bust that bubble and step out of it and begin to make the difference in someone's life. When people die, people remember what they did for them. They don't remember what they did for themselves. They don't say, well, he wakes up every morning and have a cup of coffee for himself. No. People say, well, look at what he did for me. Look at what she said to me. Look at how he touched my life. That's because you start living when you start touching someone else. It's not about you, finally, the discipline of thanksgiving. If I'm not going to end up like an upside-down world, thanksgiving must fill my heart. Gratitude must fill my heart. You know why? Because thanksgiving and gratitude brings down the presence of God. Please, worship team, join me. Gratitude and thanksgiving brings down the presence of God. When your heart is full of grumpiness, when your heart is full of complaint, when your heart is full of murmuring, you drive God's presence far away from you. But when you're a thankful person, the best thing somebody can ever say to you when you've dusted the floor for them or you cleaned something for them, what is the best thing someone can say to you? Thank you. It's so precious. It's so priceless. And you feel like, say it again, say it again, say it again. Because it ministers to your heart. Each time we worship God, it creates an environment where he comes down and he rests in our presence. I don't want to step out of my house without his presence. I remember reading the story of a young girl. It's a very, very sad story. Stepped out of the house with her mom, went to the shopping mall to buy something, and she was caught in a crossfire, and a stray bullet hit her. And I said, God, the world out there is such a dangerous place. Once you step out of your living room, it's such a dangerous place. We need your presence. We need you with us. And look at that last slide that I have there. This is what God promised us at the beginning of the year. And I want us to remind it. You've got to guard it. You've got to treasure it. He said, when you go, my presence will go with you. My presence will be with you. And recently, I had this dream, and then I saw this young man in our church, in his teenage years, and he was in a kind of a danger, and I didn't like what I saw. So I began to pray. I began to pray for him. His father was in the 9 o'clock service, and I shared this. And I went to the dad, and I said, where's your son? I don't like what I saw about him, but you know what? We're going to pray. Whatever it is, God is going to step in. We live in a wicked world, but we also have a good God. We have a good Father who looks after us. Our going out is blessed, and our coming in is blessed. It says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow us all the days of our lives. So we don't need to be afraid. We don't need to be scared. We only need to have a heart that is full of praise, that is full of thanksgiving, that is full of gratitude. And I said, we're going to pray. And as we pray, I believe whatever it is, God will sort it out for us. We prayed. 2 days later, the boy was in school, and another student came and whacked him behind the leg. And somehow I don't want to be graphic, because some of you are going for lunch after this, but his bones popped out, and he was in pain. The ambulance didn't come until 3 hours later. And when the ambulance came, they got to the hospital. As they were wheeling him into the hospital, guess who was walking past? A bone surgeon, one of the best in the hospital, at the right time, at the right place. And then he saw this boy crying in pain. And he said, what's the problem? They say his bone popped out. He said, don't worry about it. When they popped the bone back, and the pain went. Talk about God showing the right people to you at the right time. When you need help, may the right helper be available. May the right door be open. May the right window be open. May God's favor and special kindness, may he visit us, because that's what we enjoy with his presence. Let's rise up on our feet as we pray. Father God.